If you've been watching me here, you know that tumbler making has quickly become one of my favorite things to do with my Thunder laser. I love full wrap engraves, I like doing logos, I love it all. I've found a few things that work really well for me, and I have a few tips and tricks that I wanted to share today. Things that will make your success come a little bit easier. If that sounds interesting to you, let's get started. My first tip is to avoid head crashes when starting up your laser, especially if you consistently leave your rotary in your laser, and as you turn it on, you're not necessarily thinking about where the head of the laser is going, because the startup always takes it to that back corner. If you have left that rotary up kind of high and you put a tumbler in it, you could easily crash that into your tumbler as it comes back really fast. I suggest setting an origin every time you turn off your laser, just to put it towards that back corner, just as a good habit to make sure that you don't have any head crashes. The next tip I have for you is to always make a template for the item that you're working with. Even if you think that it might be a one-off, or you'll just set the origin on the cup and do the one-off thing, you'll find that once you find a size of something that you like, you can easily repeat it by having a template for that cup. For example, I use the 30-ounce polar camels quite a bit. They're really popular. So I made a template that gives me this top of the tumbler to the top of the ring portion of the tumbler, and about how wide I like something to look. This allows me to always just place my artwork within that box, center it, set my origin to the top of the cup, and then I can run from there. I don't have to be thinking about distance, remeasuring, all of those different things. You may think that this isn't worth it if you're doing different random one-off things, but you'll find that you'll use it more than you expect, especially if you have an order that seems to be custom, but then people really enjoy it and you want to make something similar again. Having that template saved in Lightburn will save you so much time. The next tip I have is to always do a test run with painter's tape as you're getting started. As you get further along, you may not have this issue, but I'm still finding errors in the files that I'm sending to Lightburn. So if I'm copying and pasting something from Illustrator, I may not have created my paths correctly, and so there may be something that doesn't engrave. And I don't see it in Lightburn right away. I don't see it until I do that run with painter's tape. Having that painter's tape test to make sure that everything's good to go is well worth it, in my opinion, in saving you time and materials. To allow yourself to do those tests really quickly, I also suggest having two different layers that you consistently use for your test run and for your actual engraving run. This way you know what your file's set up for, and it'll help you avoid mistakes of accidentally sending your actual engraving run when you're trying to do your test run. On my test runs, I use 800 speed and 16 power and about 0.1 line interval, because I'm just trying to make sure that this is going to work. I don't really need to have it be as perfect as it might be when I'm actually running my tumblers. I will have that on one layer, and then on a different color layer, I keep the actual engraving settings, and I only adjust those there. So that way my test layer is always ready to go, and I know if I set something for that layer, that is my test engraving layer, and I don't ever mess with it so that I don't ever cut through that painter's tape and start cutting into my cup. Even with all of these tests and these preparations, you won't always get it right. So I suggest having a backup cup. If you are doing something that is an order that is time sensitive, or you're doing a big run of something and you need to have it done accurately and quickly, have a backup or a couple backups. I know that's an investment in inventory that you may not want to make, but having to wait multiple days to get another cup if you make a mistake can be more costly in the long run. Have a backup. One reason that you'll want a backup is that not all colors of the same brand engrave the same. I found that Polar Camels, the maroon, I can do at a 35 power on my Nova 24 60 watt, but the blue I need to do at 40 power and with a higher lines per inch just to get that powder coating off. It's something with the colors that it doesn't come off as easily. Don't assume that the same brand, different colors will require the same settings. If you do make a mistake, make that cup your test cup. Run all sorts of tests on that. Different lines per inch, different speeds, different power. I made a mistake the other day and was able to use that water bottle to really figure out what those blue settings should be for that Polar Camel that was giving me so much trouble. Another big tip, once you understand your steps per rotation, don't need to change that unless the portion of the cup that is on the rollers is different than the size of the cup that you're engraving. For example, a water bottle. The rim, which is what's gonna ride on the rollers, is a different size than the body. This will have a different steps per rotation than a standard cup. So you'll need to make sure that you test for that. Make sure that you keep a log of all of these settings so that you aren't scrambling to test this every time. Because once you know what it is, you're good to go. You don't need to change that every time. Another tip that I learned from looking at a lot of the different Facebook groups is to try using an offset if the logo isn't looking exactly the way that you want it to. Sometimes the color that's showing through isn't necessarily the color that you want as the primary color in your logo. For example, I'm working on this lion and I was really struggling to get his outline to look right. So I needed to actually create an offset, really, really small, so that I could get the right parts to engrave dark and the other parts to engrave light. This is really, really easy to accomplish in Lightburn, so you can test it out and try and see what those results will look like. My next tip is learn to make mock-ups before you run anything. I use Adobe Illustrator to make my mock-ups, and there's a couple of different tricks that I use within that to make it look more accurate to what it will look like when it's engraved on the cup. I use a stainless steel gradient that fills the color of the cup, and then I also use an arch warp effect to make it look rounded on the body of the cup. You can get a really good idea of what something is going to look like and how I want it to fit on a cup. I can also share that with my customers so that they get an idea of what they're looking for before I run any tests and have a wasted cup. If you are using the Polar Camel line from JDS, they have blank images that you can go grab from their website for free. So you can grab those and use those in whatever software that you use to create mock-ups. So that's another great reason to use those Polar Camels, is they're easily accessible and they have free mock-ups. I hope these tips help you have more success in your Tumbler engravings. I definitely have made a lot of mistakes, and some of them I've been able to fix, but some of them have just been unfortunate oopsie cups. If you're interested in getting more tips real time rather than waiting for a video, we have a Facebook group called Laser Maker School. The information is in the description if you want to join us over there. We talk about all things laser businesses, Lightburn, different lasers, project ideas. So if you want to join us there, we'd love to have you.